But I'm going to try to drag us back to the movie here.
This is what the movie is about. It's about nuclear war. We're talking about nuclear war.
No, we're talking about workplace accidents.
OSHA incidents.
Yes. What I want to talk about here.
Oh, welcome back to Shat on workplace safety.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we love and growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why do they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday nights searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I'm one of your three co-hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Gene Joshua Lyons.
How about a nice game of chess?
No.
I love it. That's
No.
so good. That's the best. No, that's
right.
the best. And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week the audience selects from 6 movie choices that we then break out a race car VHS tape winder and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of each podcast, the three of us will provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. You can download Shat the Movies via iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are found. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Taboo. That being said, Big D, what movie are we doing this episode?
So I'm excited. We've been doing the holiday Shatacular, and then we had a couple commissions, so we're finally back to the voting blocks. We haven't touched them in a few weeks, and the category was the best of Matthew Broderick.
Ah, there's nothing better than ringing in a 2019 with a Matthew Broderick category.
At least we're not doing something like Glory. That would suck to ring in the new year.
What movies were in the category for Matthew Broderick? Because we've already done Ferris Bueller. Listen, we've already done it. If you're wondering where it is, go listen to the archives.
In last place, Lady Hawk, then Biloxi Blues, Godzilla, Glory, The Cable Guy, and the winner with 42% of the vote. We had over 2,000 total votes submitted. The 1983 classic WarGames.
AKA the source of all of Gene's 5-year-old fears.
WarGames is a 1983 American Cold War science fiction film that follows David Lightman, played by Matthew Broderick, a young hacker who unwittingly accesses a United States military supercomputer originally programmed to predict possible outcomes of nuclear war. Lightman gets the supercomputer to run a nuclear war simulation, believing it to be a computer game, and the computer, now tied to the nuclear weapons control system and unable to tell the difference between simulation and reality, attempts to start World War III. This film was a box office success, costing $12 million and grossing $79 million after 5 months in the US and Canada. The film was nominated, surprisingly, for 3 Academy Awards and a sequel, WarGames The Dead Code, which I have not seen. I don't know if you guys have seen this, was released direct to DVD in 2008. We always ask a question, where were you? What are your memories the first time you watched this movie?
I want to point out to the audience at home that when Roger inserts his commentary and opinions into the introduction of the film, that is not necessarily endorsed by everybody on the podcast, because he'll do that shit. The notes say the film was a box office success and nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Surprisingly, is Roger, I wish we could just put little footnotes or like an asterisk in there, or just like a little chime.
Yeah.
A chime that this message not necessarily endorsed by everyone else on the podcast.
I'm happy to sit back and do little quips at the narrator. If you want to host an episode, you host it. You do whatever you want to do with the script, and I'll sit back here and make snarky remarks.
I just like it because I never even realized that he subtly dictates the tone. So he'll be like, Sinbad, remember that guy? Yeah.
Oh, really? You're defending Sinbad?
Or the genre will be like, let's say it'll be like a horror movie from 1984, and he'll be like, this movie was a 1984 piece of shit horror movie. Wait a minute, what? Anyway.
But listen, I feel bad for Sinbad. I will say this from a defending perspective. Go back and listen to our Jingle All the Way podcast. I feel like Sinbad should be the genie in the new Aladdin live action movie. Have you seen the pictures of Will Smith? That's Sinbad's role. He was born to play it.
Yeah, I think that Disney, when they're trying to bank one of their live action, cornerstone summer blockbusters, you really want to do that with Sinbad in the marquee.
Yeah, I mean, they did that with Robin Williams. Lightning can strike twice.
So anyway,
all right. So what? Anyway, yeah. Back to WarGames.
Yeah. So WarGames. So WarGames came out in 1983. I don't know if I saw it exactly when it came out. I know I didn't see it in the theater, but this movie and Project X, which I don't know if you guys remember Project X, another Matthew Broderick movie with the chimpanzees that flew jets. Do you remember that? They were training chimpanzees in a simulator to basically fly into nuclear zones and drop bombs on Soviets again. Anyway, these two movies, that was also a Matthew Broderick movie, were two of my favorite movies as a kid, but also gave me nightmares because I was both excited and terrified by the prospect of nuclear annihilation.
Big D, what is your first memories of WarGames?
So I was 10 years old at the time, and I can remember my father taking me to see this. I was blown away. I thought computers were the coolest thing I'd ever seen. You got to remember, 83, I think. Apple's Lisa was the first personal computer to come out with a GUI interface. I had talked my parents into getting me a Commodore 64 after this movie. I wanted to have David set up. And in looking this up for this podcast, I found out that the Commodore 64 in 1983 was $595. That's the equivalent of $1,500 today. My parents, between laser tag and this, I did not give them nearly enough credit for what they did for me growing up. But one thing I want to say, this didn't give me nightmares like it did for Gene. I'm a little bit older. What gave me nightmares was the day after. If anyone out there is old enough to remember, it was a TV miniseries about a group of survivors after nuclear holocaust. And that shit to today, I can see the commercial for it. It's grainy. That terrified me as a child.
I just like how you present yourself as this humble, gentle giant that came from humble beginnings, whose parents, raised him, with a strict authoritarian, didn't really have much. The more I hear of your stories, of you playing laser tag, your Commodore 64s, all your original Star Wars toys, I'm starting to believe that you were kind of a spoiled rich kid from New York.
I've started to question that too.
Regardless, my neighbor who lived across the street with me growing up, Brian Say, his family was also the kind of family that would buy Brian a Commodore 64. And I think I've mentioned this on another podcast before. They were the family that had the black cable box. And for those kids and millennials who don't know what that is, this is a way for you to steal cable. And if you hook that up through a VCR, you could just record all the movies, because at the time it was basically the 1980s version of Netflix. Every movie was on there. So they had a catalog of well over 1,000 movies. This was one of his favorite movies. He always made me try to watch, but at the time, because he had all the cool toys, I was much more interested in playing with like his kick-ass Legos, G.I. Joes, and Garbage Pail Kid cards to watch anything starring Matthew Broderick. So while I'm pretty sure I've seen this movie at some point, I could not access my zip file archives to remember whether I have or not. So this was kind of maybe the first time I've seen this.
So I feel bad doing this because normally I like us to get into the trailer, but I got to question you since you just questioned my upbringing. Yeah. Your friend had a black box, the cable box?
Yeah.
You've also claimed that your parents owned the cable company?
They did, yeah.
So you allowed your neighbor to steal from your parents?
No, so at the time, so the Ropers owned the Tomoka cable television. At the time, I was living in Jacksonville, Florida with my mom and my stepdad. So, the cable companies aren't like they are today. They used to be little localized setups versus big, massive conglomerates like Cox Cable and Comcast. So, yeah, we were just like a little small mom and pop. We actually sold to Cox Cable, or my family sold to Cox Cable a few years ago. But no, I lived that humble upbringing, unlike yourself.
Full of shit.
I couldn't watch. I couldn't watch cable.
You're full of shit. Your father owned a cattle ranch. Shut your mouth and let's hit that trailer.
David Lightman was a master, at computer games. A fast thinker.
Oh, David! Maybe you could tell us who first suggested the idea of reproduction without sex.
Your wife?
Get out, Lightman.
And a promising student at an old game
Hi.
with an electronic twist.
Are those your grades?
Yeah. I don't think that I deserved an F. Do you?
You can go to jail for that.
Only if you're over 18. This computer company is coming out with these amazing new games in a couple of months. And I want to play those games. Wow.
What?
We got something.
He found the right code word to play the game,
We're in.
but it was the wrong computer.
Shall we play a game?
How can I ask you that?
How about global thermonuclear war? Fine. All right. What the hell? They're trajectory headings for multiple impact re-entry vehicles.
What does that mean?
I don't know, but it's great.
All stations, this is Crystal Palace.
I wonder if I should use my subs.
22 Typhoon-class submarines departing Petropavlovsk.
What in the hell's happening here?
Oh my god. Shall we play?
I have 7, correction, 8. That's 8 Redbirds. Get on the sack. Tell them to flush the bombers.
Russians are still denying everything, sir.
Who are you working with?
Nobody.
Why don't I believe you?
Overday, we have Soviet missile warning.
Placed under arrest pending indictment for espionage.
Espionage?
Confidence is high. I repeat, confidence is high.
Cobra Dane, is this an exercise?
Negative, this is not an exercise. Get me the president on the horn.
It's still playing the game. It's gonna start a war.
Close up the mouth.
Is this a game or is it real?
War Games, playing soon at a theater near you.
Shall we play?
Well, during a surprise drill of a nuclear attack, many United States Air Force strategic missile wing controllers prove unwilling to turn the key required to launch a missile strike. Such refusals convinced John McKittrick and other system engineers at NORAD that a missile launch control centers must be automated without human intervention. Control is given to a NORAD supercomputer codenamed Whopper, which stands for War Operation Plan Response, programmed to continuously run war simulations and learn over time.
Codenamed. It's called an acronym, Raj. So
No, it's codenamed Whopper.
So this movie opens up and it doesn't start with Matthew Broderick or some silly high school scene or like, you know, some like 80s like do like none of that shit, right?
Like he's riding his bicycle,
No
to
fucking
the arcade.
song about war games. Like it's none of that. It's literally, although we do get that in the arcade scene a little bit. It's like video games.
That's right, a little bit.
Yeah, but no. What I loved about this is, I don't know if you guys remember what The Thing looked like, but it was that great look and feel of like that vintage government aesthetic. Like everything's very barren.
Yeah.
These guys look like they've been drinking coffee and like smoking cigarettes. They come into this building. Everyone's just wearing that olive drab and nobody really gives a shit. Hey, Carl, we know whatever. But as the tension builds up in this nuclear drill, I found that my heart was actually racing during this opening scene. They used some really simple stuff. They took simple footage. It looked like stock footage of like some steam around a missile or some shit, and like very basic music and dialogue to build a lot of tension. And I was a little curious as to why the guys all had revolvers. Cause like it takes 2 guys to turn the keys to make the missile go off. So if you shot the other guy, now you can't make the missile go off. So they'd only serve to stop a missile from being launched.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're introduced to the 2 people who are in this scene. I was shocked because it's a young Michael Madsen and low rent Anthony Hopkins he's like the low rent American version. John Spencer. You've seen him in everything, but they're talking about like, this girl who I guess is touching her marijuana plants to get primo stuff, Resin City. I was like, this is the Air Force in peacetime early 80s. Where apparently you didn't have to take a drug test to, when you were in such a highly classified job, like making sure that nuclear war doesn't commence across the globe.
Raj, this is the Air Force now. So a few years back, I don't know if you guys know about this, but a few years back, these missile command guys were actually busted in an LSD ring. So they were, and as they were subpoenaed and as they were like, a lot of them confessed to it and stuff, they were talking about like, Yeah, there were times where I was terrified out of my mind. I was seeing colors. I didn't know where I was. Hours would fly by. This is still the Air Force. And I don't know if you guys know, Big D, you might remember this, the 1980 Titan II disaster.
No, I do not.
Okay, so get this. So back in 1980, in one of these missile silos, this guy's doing routine maintenance, and they carry these big wrenches, right? These wrenches weigh like 7 or 8 pounds. Big ass wrenches.
It's like the wrench in the video of Aha's Take on Me.
Yes, exactly like that. So the guy's using it, and he drops it, and it's like, uh-oh, and it falls down that big silo, bonk, 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 and these missiles have their fuel in 2 separate compartments, and when it mixes is what fuels the rocket. Well, the fucking wrench hits one side of the missile and it ruptures. And so this toxic gas starts kicking out. And if that contacts the other gas, you've got an explosion, right? So they're like, shit, everybody needs to get out of the building. Like right now, we can't stop this thing. It's, this wrench has punctured it. So there's toxic gases. And so they send in another crew and they're like, all right, we got to go figure out how to shut this down. And as those guys are going in, everyone to clear the building, an arc spark, they think off of a fan in the building, and it caused the whole thing to explode. They found pieces so the actual warhead was like so this is like in the middle of the night, basically. This is a 9.5 megaton thermonuclear warhead, got launched hundreds of yards away. One guy died. Several people were put into the hospital. And these missiles are 30 meters, so 90 feet tall.
Jeez.
Yeah, and so this was just a monstrous explosion. So if you feel safe with these missiles, they're not safe. Like these are all over the place and it is very dangerous.
I just like how we built nuclear warheads to not be able to withstand a giant wrench hitting the outside of it.
Well, I mean, listen, to the military's credit, though, think of it this way. There was an 1,800 meter fireball that went up into the atmosphere during this explosion.
Yeah.
The warhead stayed intact. It landed on the ground still intact. And they're just like, oh, fuck, here's a nuclear warhead. It didn't explode. Now, if that thing would have gone off, I would have been like, hey, these guys were careless. But the U.S. military was smart enough to basically, the Air Force has a warhead that despite an explosion that gigantic, it still stayed intact. There was no nuclear release.
So basically the protection, they're like, how can we cut corners and make sure that this is cost effective for the taxpayers? What we'll do is we'll only put the safeguard and the really thick steel that won't explode upon impact if we don't want it to on the warhead. Everything else about the rocket, listen, if it goes off, whatever, we'll just get another rocket.
Guess what? Things that fly through the air at supersonic speed, they're not made of steel. They got to be made of thin, lightweight material. You can't have a missile that's made out of fucking steel pots and pans. That's why it won't fly. But I'm going to try to drag us back to the movie here.
This is what the movie is about. It's about nuclear war. We're talking about nuclear war.
No, we're talking about workplace accidents.
Shit incidents.
Yes. What I want to talk about here.
Welcome back to Shat on workplace safety.
This movie isn't about workplace accidents. It's just a movie that has workplace accidents in it.
Mm-hmm. What I want to talk about is the dilemma that the two guys faced. A computer is telling you to turn the key. You don't have anyone verbally telling you. You're isolated in that room. I don't know that I could turn the key without someone telling me, yes, this is the correct thing to do. Would you be able to turn the key in that situation, knowing you would be killing roughly 50% of the world's population?
Well, obviously, yes. I mean, of course I would, because that's my job. I've been trained to do that. That's what they do. The thing that would really fuck with my head, though, is all these simulations that they keep running me through to make sure that I have the mental dexterity to turn that fucking key. You would think at some point there is some sort of failsafe or additional process to ensure these nuclear warheads aren't going to go off. You know what I mean? You can't just receive some sort of code and the training is the exact same scenario. When you did training exercises, Big D, in the military, even when it was live ammunition, there were still safeguards in place to ensure that no one died, right?
Yeah, but I wasn't just firing into an empty room, that there could be people. That's the thing here, is when you're out there and you can assess the situation and you have communications with your chain of command, you know that what you're doing is what is desired. It's part of the mission. These guys in that isolated room, the damn fucking blinking red light doesn't work. He's got to tap it to get it come on.
Yeah, I wouldn't turn it. I mean, the thing is, it's nuclear war, so what's the point of turning it? You're not going to win. You know that, like,
Yeah.
so if you turn it, you know millions of people are going to die. If you don't turn it, chances are millions of people are still going to die, but at least you didn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
Wasn't there an article recently uncovered or published a couple years ago that said the USA technology is like stopped somewhere in the late 60s? Like they were running out of the ability to service the computer systems that maintain our current nuclear systems here in America from going off.
Well, again, let's divert away from the movie, but you're correct. I saw a thing on the secondhand market for those little 3.5-inch floppies, the little hard disks you used to have when we were in like high school back in 1985. There's a huge secondary market because the only computers in the world that still use those are a lot of the Department of Defense and a lot of the U.S. government. So there's a big secondary market. So I'm scared now. Maybe, yes, besides dropping wrenches, these dickheads are playing with a Commodore 64 that's hooked up to that MX Titan missile.
I just want to know, was there a promotional tie-in with Burger King? Because they constantly keep calling the word Whopper. They keep calling it Whopper. Like, and Whopper it doesn't seem like it would be a military acronym.
No, Burger King didn't even need to have a tie-in because they said Whopper like 3 times in this movie. I got hungry. Like, I was like, I want a burger now. And Burger King probably just looked at it and were like, fuck, we're covered. And they got the blinking lights right where the patty would be. I mean, it's delicious.
I've been marketing now, and there's a couple things that we don't like to promote our product with, and that's genocide and nuclear Armageddon. So I can kind of understand Burger King not wanting to tie in to the end of the world.
Are you telling me you don't want a Whopper commemorative glass from the 1980s?
Oh, fuck yeah. That could go with my Empire Strikes Back glasses.
Well, David Lightman, a high school student and hacker, uses his computer to break into the school district's computer system and change his grades. Later, he connects with a system that does not identify itself. While asking for games, he finds a list that includes theater-wide biotoxic and chemical warfare, as well as global thermonuclear war, but cannot proceed further. However, 2 of his hacker friends suggest tracking down the Falcon referenced in Falcon's Maze, the first game listed. David then discovers that Stephen Falcon was an early artificial intelligence researcher and guesses correctly that his dead son's name, Joshua, is the password.
So one thing that's nice about this movie was we're used to high school scenes and actors and actresses being 35-year-olds. You think back to like Beverly Hills 90210. They were all like, it seemed like in their early 30s. These kids in this class look like they're students. Ali Sheedy was 20 at the time. So I don't know where we got away from that, but I liked it. It seemed like an actual class with actual students.
Yeah, this is the youngest I've ever seen Matthew Broderick. And I mean, he definitely had like a touch of nerdiness, but also like he was kind of hunky. He was like a hunky nerd, right?
He was not nerdy. He had game. He lured her up to his bedroom. He's got the shirt off. He goes in for the kiss when he has a chance. He is not. He is the role model for the computer nerd that gets the girl.
Did you guys notice he's so cool that he doesn't wear his wristwatch on his wrist? It's in his pocket. That's what all the cool kids did in the 80s. They had the wristwatch in the pocket that they would pull out. Like, I'm too cool for a wristwatch.
Yeah. But for as cool as they depicted this nerd to be, which you would typically think that, like, we've reviewed movies like Real Genius, right? We did Real Genius, not Top Secret. I thought Real Genius was Top Secret, and it's not. But like, you know how I think that's the only other cool computer nerd, like outside of Revenge of the Nerds, like someone who was smart, witty, cool, like that was it. But like this one was almost like he was a nerdier Ferris Bueller, like changing the grades, skipping school to go to the arcades, and making little quips in the back of his classroom. Reproduction without sex? You mean your wife?
No, he was a better Ferris Bueller.
You think he was better?
I would pay for Ferris Bueller to be David Lightman. He was much more likable. He wasn't pompous and arrogant. I liked him much better.
Yeah, I think this is a point where we should point out, though, that this movie isn't quite perfect. Because I was like, man, I love this movie. I love the opening. I love these characters. And then it came to the scene where they were like researching Falcon. And that's where I was like, this is kind of weird. There's a scene where Ali Sheedy is like looking at Falcon on this video or movie. And she's like, wow, he looks amazing. I'm like, he just looks like David Byrne, kind of. Like, I don't see what's so amazing about that.
Did you not hear Cary Gross getting a little moist for Vincent Price?
Well, Vincent Price and Falcon are not the same.
Well, the irony is that like she seems to be like kind of lusting after like an old after Falcon, and then she realizes he was 41. He's old. I'm a couple years away from that, and I was like, man, Ali Sheedy's kind of hot. And then I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, I'm almost as old as this guy that she thinks is old. Like that's the point that I've realized I've gotten really old, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason why
It's not good.
the reason why she's complimenting him is because she wants David to know that she's DTF.
Right. But Ali Sheedy is the perfect girl next door. Like when I was the Matthew Broderick age, not that in my late 30s, Roger Roper, but like when I was that age, I always went for the Ali Sheedy types. To this day, there's older Ali Sheedy types that those are the kind of girls I tend to go off. I loved and I was highly attracted to that character. I think she's perfect.
Well, dude, she rides so Big D pointed out that, she rides a moped. He messaged me about it. He's like, oh, she's on a moped. Dude, guys, she is not just on any moped, gentlemen. Ali Sheedy is riding a derby. And if you don't know about mopeds, a derby is a Spanish moped that is highly sought after because they are fast as shit and they're variated. So they've got a ton of torque. They're just fucking beasts of bikes. So anyway, if you don't love Ali Sheedy and you don't love her snaggletooth, you got to love the fact that she's got herself a derby. That's a fucking badass bike.
No, most people know Ali Sheedy from playing characters like in The Breakfast Club, where she's kind of gothy. We talked about that in our Breakfast Club, where that was like your first major crush before Winona. Well, did you first crush on Winona Ryder or Ali Sheedy?
Winona Ryder was first. I didn't see The Breakfast Club till after I had seen Beetlejuice,
Okay.
I think.
But in the review that we did, you mentioned that Ali Sheedy's like you're perfect. Like that character that she plays in The Breakfast Club. Are you more attracted to that character? A little dark, a little quiet, you're not quite sure what's there. She's wearing long dresses. Or are you attracted to this like cute girl next door? She's athletic, but she's not like a cheerleader. And she's always willing to like pick up the phone. And she's riding this really cool moped. Are you attracted to that type of Ali Sheedy or the Breakfast Club Ali Sheedy?
Oh, definitely Breakfast Club Ali Sheedy.
Little Jesus.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's a little crazy.
You just
She's a little weird.
Are you? Oh, you're ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, because that helps Gene feel good about himself with a damaged girl. In this movie, she's perfect. She's flexible. She's athletic. She likes to run. She doesn't mind.
She loves dogs.
Yeah, she doesn't mind him being the bad boy and changing the grade. She doesn't snitch on him. She flies out to see him.
Yeah,
she's the shit.
great.
And you want a damaged chick
amazing.
Who's hiding all this shit in her purse? She's a hoarder?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah, are you kidding me? Ali Sheedy's character is the perfect girl. The perfect girl.
The thing with the perfect girl is that she's not there. She's a non-entity.
Oh, God. Gene wants like a fixer-up project.
That's right. Well, outside of really liking Ali Sheedy's character, I did like some of the side characters, like the hacker friends. I really wish there were more of those in modern day movies. These guys would probably come back and show up at some point to instruct the hero of the movie, the autistic friend Malvin and his friend Jim that recommend how to do the backdoor passwords.
Paging Dr. Roper, how did you make that clinical diagnosis from 30 seconds on screen?
Because Jim says to Malvin, didn't we talk about the social cues and being able to pick up, people's emotions? That's a sign that he understands that he's autistic. And Malvin's like, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize, I didn't do that. He's on the spectrum. He's like, he's the original Sheldon.
Who on the podcast sounds like that?
King B?
No.
Okay.
What's great is Jim and Malvin are actually like two programmer archetypes that are still relevant today. Like if I look on any dev team that I work with, there's always that big sloppy grumpy white dude and then the skinny uptight socially awkward dude. It's so weird.
I work with both of them. One of them is like a Star Trek aficionado. He works on like these side projects of people that do like fanfic movies. That is the guy you said was on the spectrum. And I work with his partner who's the angry network engineer. It's so real.
Yeah, they're timeless. They're timeless depictions. I thought the one depiction that didn't ring true was the guy who worked for the Air Force, the real nerd. He was I don't know if I could say this. He was kind of like the bald Jewish guy in the sweater. Like, didn't you get that stereotype from him?
Who are you talking about? Where did this guy work?
He was the guy running Whopper. He had like the goatee and the sweater, kind of chubby guy.
Oh,
he kind of looked like a poor man's Paul Giamatti. And the funny thing though is Raj is reminding me of that episode of The Office where Michael Scott needs to use things to remind him of people's names. So he's like, autistic guy, fat bald Jew in the vest.
Hold on, I thought you didn't watch the American version of The Office.
Stopped by Carrie Gross's house. She was sick the other day, watched 14 episodes in a row. She watched 7 hours
It's so good.
of The Office. It is dumb.
It is the greatest. And if you've got yourself a free weekend, I highly recommend doing nothing but just binge watching The Office.
Carrie did.
But like, yeah. But like, all right. So I don't even know the character's name. So we're going to say low rent Paul Giamatti. He's in charge of this Whopper, this sadistic computer that we grow to understand. The creator, Malkin, is it Dr. Malkin?
Falcon.
When did the computer become sadistic?
Yeah.
Okay, come with me here. Come with me. He says things like, "Shall we play a game?" That's directly from a horror movie that came out in early 2000s called Saw. So obviously he wants to kill humanity. And I think it stems from the fact that Joshua was an abandoned child longing for attention from his father or creator. It was jealous of the real Joshua, the son that Dr. Falcon had and was teaching this computer. But after he died, after the original human Joshua died, he wanted revenge on humanity because he was shut down and he didn't receive any affection from Dr. Falcon. And that's why he wants to get back. He wants to play games with humans.
You're not allowed to do Westworld Season 3. You don't understand computers at all.
Fuck no. No way. No way.
That's my Teddy Flood theory.
Jesus. Is this what you do at work when you do your product demo? I want to see one of your sales pitches.
David starts the game of thermonuclear war playing as the Soviet Union. The computer starts a simulation that briefly convinces the military personnel at NORAD that the actual Soviet nuclear missiles are inbound. While they defuse the situation, Whopper nonetheless continues the simulation to trigger the scenario and win the game, as it does not yet understand the difference between reality and simulation. It continuously feeds false data such as Soviet bomber incursions and the submarine deployments to NORAD, pushing them into raising DEFCON levels and toward a retaliation that will start World War III.
So, kids, I'm going to take you on a journey back to 1983. For those in our audience who weren't even alive back then, I know it's hard to conceive. In 1983, only 15% of households had VCRs. Sony that year introduced the first camcorder for consumer use. Microsoft's first version of Word, which was called Multi-Tool Word, was released. The CD format was still being developed by Sony and Philips. I said before that the Apple Lisa was released, the first personal computer with a GUI interface, and it had a whopping 5 megabyte hard drive and 1 megabyte of RAM. How the hell NORAD managed to function without accidentally starting World War III, forget about the wrench, is a sheer miracle.
This is why I don't think that the lunar deniers are that off base. Like, I'm like, how the hell did we get to the moon in the 60s when this is the best computers we had? It just doesn't add up, man. Like, it seems like these computers were barely fit to operate a car, much less an entire space program.
Yeah, but what's more amazing is think of how many of the rockets NASA had blew up.
Right.
How many accidents did they have? How the fuck did we, besides like your wrench story, how did we not accidentally, some dickhead, plug the red wire into the black hole and just not have some accident? It's a miracle it didn't happen.
Well, I'll say this. Do you guys watch any YouTube videos? Have you seen the one with the former NASA engineer that built the box to capture people who steal Amazon packages off of his front porch?
I did. And obviously you have plenty of time because you're watching episodes of The Office. You're watching YouTube videos. You're recommending every series on Netflix that I see, but yet you can't watch WarGames until 20 minutes before we record.
This week was very busy. I didn't watch any of The Office.
Yeah,
but
no YouTube videos on box traps for Amazon.
It was a 5-minute video. I could watch it as I was walking to the next gate to fly to Boston.
Okay.
But yeah, no. So he over engineers this package that does basically a glitter bomb, and then also, as the person is like, "What the fuck? I just got hit with a glitter bomb." It also then triggers a device that sprays a fart can spray that sprays really smelly aerosol into the air. Like, so you just see all these videos. Listen, if that guy is a former NASA engineer who helped build the Mars rovers, then yeah, I think that NASA, hires pretty brilliant people who, can do things like put man on the moon and send nuclear warheads across the globe to our enemies. So listen, the thing that I'm really worried about is, how did we let that guy go be a YouTube star? He should still be at NASA.
I'm just imagining Roger Roper on Christmas Eve. He's kicking back. He's got his Santa Claus sweatpants on, and he's watching Home Alone, and he's like getting a little bit hard at all the tricks that Macaulay Culkin's pulling, and then he slowly pulls down his sweatpants, and he starts touching himself a little bit. He's like, "Oh yeah, here comes the paint can," and then right at the last second, he looks over to his phone, and on YouTube, he's got fart spray glitter bomb. This is all he wants. Like, this is just an extension of your fucking Home Alone fantasy, you dirty bastard.
Yep.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Anyway, I just want to point out that there's a lot of famous people in this movie, and just to get it out of the way so we can move on with the rest of the pod. If you didn't catch them in this movie, you got Dabney Coleman, you got James Tolkien, who was Stinger on Top Gun, like he was in charge of the aircraft carrier, that guy, the bald guy. Mm-hmm. And you've got a young William H. Macy as well. And as you mentioned before, Michael Madsen, he's only 26 years old in this movie. So there was there were a lot of other people, but those are kind of the biggest stars in the movie. So great job by casting, man. They had an eye for talent in this one.
And you and I said in the conversation, in a lot of movies where the military is depicted, they don't feel right. There's something off. They're acting. These guys they put together all seem capable. They're discussing the strategy, what they're going to do. I liked them. They were great. It reminded me a lot of Under Siege, how we liked the Pentagon, and how when, hey, adults are in the room, fuck Seagal, they're going to make a plan. I thought these guys could make a plan. I liked them.
Yeah, but let's say you're Matthew Broderick's character and you're playing this game and you think it's just a game, and it's that, crappy 80s text-based RPG games, which I never played because my parents couldn't afford a Commodore 64 like Big D's could. Which city, if you were playing that game, would you destroy first? Because in the movie, they're like, oh, let's kill Las Vegas first. But like, if you had to pick any city across the globe, which one would you target with a nuclear warhead?
Scottsdale.
Hey, dude, I'm in that blast radius. What the fuck?
You'll get a call. Don't worry. You'll get a call ahead of time.
Why Scottsdale?
There's a high value target there I want to take out.
Gene, what country would you target? Or what city?
Shit, country. Goddamn. God, what city would I target? Well, I mean, if it's an American city, Seattle's not a bad choice. You know what I do? I do Portland, and here's why. Because I want to make it affordable again. Like, Portland has gone crazy with the rent, and there's no housing available. Blow it to hell. Start it all over again. No, but no, it'd have to be somewhere in Texas, I'm sure. Hawaii would keep the most of the U.S. safe, so that might not be that bad. But in the world, I mean, what can we do to Baghdad that we haven't already done? I don't know.
You see, as a New Yorker, New York gets destroyed in more movies than any other city. Whether it's 2012, whether it's Godzilla attacking, it always gets destroyed. I want someplace that nobody would ever think. I would go somewhere like in the Midwest, like
Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska,
maybe Lima. Let's go with Lima.
Kansas City, Missouri.
Lima, Ohio looks like a nuclear bomb already went off there.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't need your help, Big D.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'll stick with Scottsdale.
Oh, there you go. Well, David learns the true nature of his actions from a news broadcast, and FBI agents arrest him. David escapes NORAD by joining a tourist group, and with his friend Jennifer's help, travels to an island where Falcon lives. David and Jennifer find that Falcon has become despondent and believes that nuclear war is inevitable, that it's as futile of a game as tic-tac-toe between two experienced players. The teenagers convince Falcon that he should return to NORAD to stop Whopper.
one of the things I love about this movie is it's 2 hours, but the plot moves at a fast pace. There's no wasted time. I thought, and I always remembered, there was some back and forth, like he almost gets caught, then he logs back on, he almost gets caught again. He does it once, essentially, and it calls back, and then the FBI is all over him.
You're talking about the most conspicuous FBI agents ever? They're like he walks into like the parking lot of 7-Eleven and he doesn't notice the 4 dudes with white head earpieces wired to their belt.
No, I thought I was watching a retro themed episode of Bang Bus. I thought that like all those guys, like I could just hear the and it might just be my mustache taking over my brain, but it was I thought shit was gonna get dirty.
Yeah, it looked like the Beastie Boys sabotage.
Yes.
That's what it looked like.
Yes, that's one of your best references ever. Yes, that's so accurate. Yeah. So they finally catch him though, and this bucket here is kind of dense. It covers a lot of area. David gets caught. He gets taken into the Cheyenne Mountain complex. He's put into the infirmary, right? Because they're finally the FBI is gonna come take him. They're gonna charge him with espionage because this dumb fuck has been doing everything possible to make himself look guilty, instead of just saying, hey, let me log in as Joshua. I'll show you what the computer does. He's going to talk to me and ask me to fucking play the game. He doesn't do that. Then they lock him up and he says, you know what? I got to escape now because I want to make myself look even more guilty. So right. David takes out, and it's a scene that's very memorable, the little voice recorder, and he starts listening to the doctor's notes, and the doctor's like, eyes are dilated, consistent with the use of marijuana and PCP. I was like, fucking PCP? Who's using PCP in the Cheyenne Mountain Complex? But now, Gene, your story about the PCP and drug use makes complete sense.
You're welcome.
But the Cheyenne Mountain Complex has bigger problems than David Lightman hacking into the computer.
Okay, but let me ask you that. Do you think that that scene was him discovering how the Air Force or the FBI was going to set him up? Like they had planted this voice recording? Like they just have it in the background in case some kid were to try to hack their systems. They could plant all this evidence on him. It's like the cops sprinkling crack on people.
It wasn't his voice. It was another patient.
I come with me on that. It's another patient. Okay.
Yeah, there's no frame job. You kidding me? Fucking David looks guilty. If I was in there, I wouldn't have even said a word to him. I would have gotten him, taken him in. There's nothing that makes any of the people in this movie think he's got fucking reservations for 2 on a plane to Paris.
Yeah, but is this a satire or a hit piece on the Air Force? Because there's constant, like you said, the marijuana weed references and PCP, which shout out to Last Boy Scout. But then they're also like doing like stupid things like programming the escape door code to be 444-555. And then what is that officer looking at as she's walking around the Whopper? Like, did she not notice the display that clearly read
Yeah, I saw that.
War game occurring 9 hours left? Or how about the Freddie Mercury lookalike guard hitting on the Air Force secretary? Talk about a meet. Actually, he kind of looked like you, Gene. I got this creepy Gene in the Air Force in the early 80s where apparently sexual abuse was, accepted amongst male and female coworker relationships.
Yeah, I'm glad you corrected it to sex abuse and not hitting on her. He was not hitting on her. He was creeping her the fuck out. That guy was creepy. I don't know if it was a satire or a hit piece on the Air Force. I think that they were trying to show that, like, make it plausible that Matthew Broderick could even escape. You had to have some dipshit guard that would let him out. If you had some serious guy, if you had the guy from Under Siege, Matthew Broderick's not getting out.
Yeah, but listen, Gene, if anybody could pull off a beret and a mustache like that and try to get the secretary to give him tips on her backhand, that would be you.
Yeah.
But this escape is not possible without, for some reason, this is a top secret installation. This is the highest tech. This is the brain center. This is the control center of the entire U.S. nuclear arsenal. They're doing fucking tours.
They're doing tour groups.
What?
Beyond that, it's apparently an interactive experience where, like at Planet Hollywood, they're like, come and sit in the control and press this button. Oh no, you just launched a nuclear attack. Just kidding. It's your birthday. We wanted to do something crazy for you.
Yeah, I don't know what that fucking tour was about.
Dude, it was 83. We're at the top of our game. I think it was just the sort of thing. Look, they're letting the computer drive. Like, that's where we are and how serious NORAD is at this point. Hey, why don't we let the computer drive? It already fucked up once today. Let's keep it online.
Yeah, it's like, where Skynet, at least Skynet was a real super thinking computer. It could outsmart the humans. The fucking Whopper has the mentality of like a 12-year-old boy. He shouldn't be out thinking anyone.
A 12-year-old sadistic boy who's jealous of his older brother that died. But like beyond these Air Force's incompetence, did you also feel that there was no screen chemistry between Sheedy and Broderick?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It was weird because he had a great cast. I thought that there were great acting jobs by everybody. Everybody was very likable, from minor characters to the main characters. But you're absolutely right, Raj. The moments that they shared together where there was supposed to be some degree of romance or some degree of like a mushiness in your gut, it just didn't ring true. It felt very awkward. I think Matthew Broderick at this point was very good at playing like the kid. He was very good at playing like the smart guy or whatever, but I don't think that he really had that depth to his character. And honestly, I don't know that I've seen him in a movie that really had that depth.
Okay, so I have to apologize, but you are the 40-year-old Persian Casanova. You would not expect Matthew Broderick, an 18-year-old high school student who spends more time in front of his computer screen than with a girl doing splits or wrapping her legs around his waist. If you were an 18-year-old high school student, you would have busted in your pants and had to like run to the bathroom to change.
Yeah, but he does that weird line where they're like about to get caught by the helicopter where he's like, I really wanted to learn how to swim. And it's like, and you're just like, what? This is a really weird line. And it was very forced and contrived.
But you're talking about chemistry. Does he back away from the kiss? He goes in, he gets it.
No, I think he was going to lean in and then she did I'm just going to kiss your cheek. That like the fairy kiss.
Oh.
That what you're referring to?
No, there was a kiss there as the helicopter swooped
Yeah,
in.
but the first attempt at kiss was the fairy kiss. That was very awkward.
Yeah, he almost went in the friend zone. Almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they now escape. He flies out. Somehow time stops because they said like they had 12 hours left, but somehow he escapes the mountain, calls her, then gets to the airport, flies 3 hours, meets her, does a ferry to the island, and they meet Faulkner. And Faulkner, again, of course, he's had it with the world,
Hold on. I think she flew to him. No, she drove. It was only 3 hours.
Yeah.
It was only 3 hours.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Did he fly?
Flew.
Where?
Or did you?
He flew.
Listen, this is what happens when you watch the movie 20 minutes before we do this.
He flew to Oregon. You're right.
Yes, he flew, and she said, "I'm only 3 hours away." So they meet. They go to the island. They meet him. He's had it. He doesn't care. He thinks that humanity should die. I'm surprised you didn't get a little boner here, thinking it was Thanos, that he didn't care, that this was the universe's way to clean itself up. But he's a fucking dick. When that helicopter swoops in, like you said, it looks like an episode of Cops. They're chasing them around the beach. They're running. It's a good 35, 45 seconds. It's stressful. He lands the helicopter. Guess what? Who's there in the co-pilot seat? It's Faulkner. He takes up the mic and says, hey, get in the helicopter. How about you fucking do that as you're doing strafing runs? It looked like you were out on a safari. It looked like The Thing where they're chasing that dog. Faulkner's a dick.
Falcon's a dick too.
Yeah.
I said Faulkner's a dick. Faulkner, he's a dick.
Falcon.
You mean Dr. Jurassic Park? Why is he so obsessed with dinosaurs? I don't get that. This seems like an odd choice for his character.
Dude, I had forgotten about that pterodactyl. So as they approach the island and I see this pterodactyl flying around, I'm like, what the fuck? Where's this movie going? I thought like they'd gone to Land of the Lost or something, or like Falcon had like moved on from supercomputers and now was working with bringing back dinosaurs. I think it was a metaphor for extinction of species, right? That he's basically saying the dinosaurs lasted longer than we did. And it's time for us to go because, we're just not capable of staying alive.
Yeah, but the dinosaurs, it was through no fault of their own. Like they didn't send a giant meteor to crash into the planet and change, the dynamics of climate that didn't support their ability to survive. This movie is about man's extinction, right? But man-made extinction. But then why is he so despondent? If they can stop it, why is he shell-shocked because of his son's death?
Yeah, he's got nothing to live for.
Or is he just accepted that he's created a monster in Whopper?
Okay, so I'll give you a little lesson on when you have a family.
Yeah.
And you have someone that you love more than yourself. If I lost my wife and my daughter, there is a 95% chance I would kill myself. So
really?
Easily. I couldn't, if my daughter, something happened to her, I don't know how I could live going on. If you get me past the initial stage, I could get therapy and work through it, but there's a good chance I'm going to my closet and I'm putting an AR-15 in my mouth, and that's it.
So first of all, I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, so do I.
Right,
That would be terrible. But also, I think that what you need to do is you still have a reason to live because you never met Gene Lyons. You'd be like, there is that one thing I haven't done in my life that I've always wanted to do. Meet Gene Lyons. And then you'd kill yourself.
That's right. In person. Yeah.
Yeah, so make sure if something happens to get King B on the line and tell him he's on next Thursday's podcast.
Did I ever tell you about the reason why King B hasn't killed himself?
Jesus, this went dark, even darker than me. Why?
No, so King B sleeps with a handgun on his nightstand. And he goes, there's nights where I just wake up and in the middle of the night and I just want to put that gun in my head and pull the trigger. He goes, but
oh my God.
What? Really?
But he's like, I hate my sister Nikki so much. And I'd be fucking goddamned if she stays alive on this planet one day longer than I do.
Really?
That's why he doesn't kill himself, because his sister would be alive longer than he is.
Shit. I guess he's got some motivation to keep going. God forbid something happens to her.
Hang in there, Nikki.
He might check out. Yeah, and I don't want people to think I'm suicidal. I'm not. I'm very happy. But this, for people out there who've probably going to get emails again for people who have lost, because when my wife and I were going through fertility and we weren't able to have a second child, I got a lot of emails and direct messages of people who had gone through the same situation. So I'm sure I'll probably get an email or a direct message about somebody who has lost a child. And again, I don't know what it would be like, but I can't imagine anything until you have a child. You can't even comprehend what I'm saying. I couldn't live another. I could, because people do survive it, but you got to get me to therapy. You got to fly out here if something happens and get that AR away from me.
Okay, so instead of ARs, is there something that like you've always been interested in, but you really want to get obsessed about? Like, I don't know, maybe prehistoric creatures that lived in the earth 300 million years ago? Can I get you like really involved in something like that? Or maybe like yoga? Just, take your mind off of it.
Asshole, you better get your ass out of here if something happens.
The computer stages a massive Soviet first strike with hundreds of missiles, submarines, and bombers, but leaving the attack to be genuine, NORAD prepares to retaliate. Falcon, David, and Jennifer convince military officials to cancel the second strike and ride out the attack. Whopper, however, tries to launch the missiles itself, using a brute force attack to obtain the launch code. Without humans in the control centers as a safeguard, the computer will trigger a mass launch. Disconnecting the computer is discussed and dismissed, as a failsafe will launch all weapons if the computer is disabled.
So Gene mentioned in the opening scenes that there's some real tension. Even though it's only two guys sitting in a room with blinking lights, you feel the weight of their decision and their choice. The movie does a fantastic job of turning the Whopper into an actual character. And yes, it's a bit heavy-handed that they do like 20 shots of the label, like the Whopper, and we see War Operational Planning Resource.
With the blinking light of eyes and a nose and a mouth. Uh-huh.
Right. But it's not even that. It's the noise it makes. It's unmistakable. It's like, whoom, 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 whoom. They turn this, it's not the villain because it's obviously just a machine, but they managed to turn this into a complete character that's equal to any of the human actors in the movie.
Are you saying that robots can't be villains?
No, I'm saying that this one's not.
It's exactly what he's saying is the Whopper can't be a villain because it's only just a bit of programming, right? It's not a robot. It's a super intelligence, right? That just does one thing and does it well. And I was listening to that Josh Clark End of the World podcast, and he talks about the fact that even if you program a machine whose simple job was just to make paper clips as efficiently as possible, if you never gave it programming not to hurt humans, the inevitable result would be the end of mankind because it would ultimately want all the resources and humans just get in the way.
So it's basically Master Command from Tron. That was a villain.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, but Master Command had a personality that was like artificial. It didn't make sense. No one would program the computer to have a personality. Whopper doesn't have a personality beyond its language database, essentially.
But I'm talking more about in the scope of the movie that they have to do these shots of the computer when the computer's doing things. It could have been just a box with a couple lights. That's not scary. But this thing, you see it there, it's like alive. You feel like, oh shit, I don't want to piss this thing off.
Right, but Raj brought up Tron, and I think that this movie hits that sweet spot where it's not just a box and it's not Master Command, right? It's not that goofy ass, like scary voice and like, animated guy. So
Right.
what I think happened here is that Tron tried way too early in the movie game to push the boundaries of computer animation, and it ended up looking kind of silly. And they focused so much on that they didn't really have the acting or the script to go along with it. WarGames, what they did is they were like, okay, it's 1983. What do computers actually look like right now? What do graphics look like right now? And so they displayed what they really could. So, Big D, you mentioned the sound. There's this great scene when the explosions are going on the screen and you see the diameter of the explosion in each city, and it makes that really bassy tone. And I was watching it with like the surround sound on, and then it's got those missile command style graphics of like tracking the missiles as they come in. And also you guys mentioned the brute force attacks. A brute force attack, if you're not familiar with the way that works, is essentially if you're trying to crack a code, you just start throwing every variable of code out until you hit pay dirt, right? It's a brute force. And they did a great job of showing that on the digital display.
Well, Falcon and David direct the computer to play tic-tac-toe against itself. It results in a long string of draws, forcing the computer to learn the concept of futility and no-win scenarios. Whopper obtains the missile code, but before launching it, it cycles through all the nuclear war scenarios it has devised, finding that they, too, all result in stalemates. Having discovered the concept of mutually assured destruction, winner equals none, the computer tells Falcon that it has concluded that nuclear war is a strange game in which the only winning move is not to play. That's the message of the movie. Whopper relinquishes control of NORAD and the missiles and offers to play a nice game of chess. End movie.
So I just talked about how they make the Whopper itself a character, so then you can feel the threat or the fear it presents. They also do a great job here of the war room. On the displays, this could have been super lame. Like you said, Gene, it's 8-bit graphics, it's 1983 high tech, but it's laughable today. And to create that tension, they use a simple thing, and they do it a couple times. They use the countdown to really ratchet up the tension. It's that I forget what she was. The one, I don't want to say the black woman. It's that
you're using the Roger Roper method of remembering
Yes.
on-screen characters. The black woman. There was only one, so the black woman.
Yeah, so it was the black woman who's counting down to the first fictional strike, the one that's a simulation. And she's like,
Right.
9, 8, 7. And you're like, oh shit's counting down. Then the second time they do it is as Joshua's trying to brute force attack and unlock that 10-digit launch code one by one. It's a simple trick they do, but with really no threat in that room visible, you feel the tension.
The tension wasn't broken by the who was the fat general that kept smoking a cigarette, or I'm sorry, not a cigarette. He kept smoking a cigar. That guy was the worst fucking character.
The head of NORAD who was like chewing dip.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was chewing dip. Redman. I don't trust no computers.
What? I'd piss on a spark plug.
I'd piss on a spark plug. That guy. Are you telling me that guy's not releasing some of the fucking tension? I wanted to throw a remote through the television when Matthew Broderick said, "It's learning."
That's only you.
Why?
No, I did.
Why?
Because it's fucking terrible. It's a terrible line. The second half of this movie is horrible. I hated it.
Ali Sheedy's
so bad.
Okay. Ali Sheedy.
Why is Ali Sheedy even there?
Because she paid for his ticket and she was with him when they were caught. But listen, Ali Sheedy got a D in whatever class that was that she was taking, literature. So
biology.
So
right.
she's not the brightest. So she's scared and she's looking at him. He's the hacker for some explanation. He says, don't worry. It's learning. He's being supported. That's his girlfriend now. He just kissed her.
Also, misplaced music in this movie. Did you find the music a little distracting? The harmonica music during a scene that's supposed to be like a tense technological thriller, but then they overlay this like harmonica music. It totally took me out of the movie. And again, at this point, I was pretty much done.
When has a harmonica never been terrifying? If you hear a harmonica
it's not
playing,
terrifying.
you better
It's
run.
just
Yes,
the
it
worst.
is.
Yeah.
The worst.
If you hear a harmonica within about the next 10 minutes, you're getting stabbed with a penknife. That's just the way it works. And left on a train track somewhere.
Yeah, your cellmate's going to shank you in the shower.
Also, this plot of tic-tac-toe.
Yeah, I don't get the tic-tac-toe thing. So I get that it's a game that it hasn't played. It's played all the other games in its repertoire, but they say tic-tac-toe is the game that it has not played. But You would think that a computer whose sole job it was to run these scenarios day in and day out over and over and over again to learn would also have learned from that specific game, Global Thermonuclear War, that there is no winning hand, right? It's just operating and constantly trying to. So I don't see how tic-tac-toe would teach it anything different. That part just kind of, I mean, I get it. I get what they're saying. I can't say it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't add up.
No, it does add up. The military doesn't want the computer to realize that it shouldn't launch the missiles. It wants it to come up with the best way that the U.S. could come out on top. If you teach it that the best thing to do is not to have war, when the time comes and the president says launch the missiles, Joshua's going to be like, no, it's not. Nobody's going to win. I won't launch and then half the people die. You don't want them thinking like that.
Okay, but is the moral of the story that nuclear war is, it's an end game towards this destruction of all of humanity, and so therefore, we shouldn't play? Or is the moral of the story that global relations is more like a chessboard, and you have to anticipate the other country's move?
So I'm all for nuclear non-proliferation, but at the same time, I will say that probably one of the best things that could have happened in the world is that another country got nuclear weapons. Because if only the U.S. had them, you bet your ass we'd be using them way more often than now. The only thing that keeps us from nuclear war is the fact that it's a zero-sum game, that everybody loses once you launch that. And I think that's the only thing that's kept missiles from launching, is the fact that as soon as one person launches one anywhere in the world, I think we're all fucked.
Yeah, I think it's called mutually assured destruction. It's the deterrent that, you're not going to set the house on fire if you're locked in there with other people, because you're going to end up killing yourself. But as the screens are flashing, we're talking about the missiles coming in and the subs, and it's really tense. I noticed on the side screen, one of the small ones, the Whopper was running through every possible World War III scenario that it had programmed. And I freeze framed it and videoed it because it was going super fast. I said, this has got to be something funny over here. So as it's blazing through, every military scenario and outcome is displayed by a name for the scenario. And they're hilarious. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the 7, and I want you to pick out which one is actually a sexual position and not a military campaign. Okay? Your first one, the Mexican takeover.
Military campaign.
I think that's a sexual position.
And okay, Roger's out of the game. The Jamaican decoy.
Military operation.
That's correct.
Sexual position.
The Viennese oyster.
Oh, that's definitely a sexual position.
Yes.
That's correct. The other options would have been the Mongolian thrust, the Gabon surprise, the Brazilian strike, and the Thai variation. So good job.
All of those were nicknames for Kerry Gross in high school.
The Jamaican decoy?
Definitely that one.
All I can think of is Predator 2. Can't see the eyes of the demon until him come calling.
Come calling.
Now's the time of the podcast where we break out our Shat meter and give you our wipe scores if you've never listened to the podcast. A 0 wipe is a fantastic movie. A 5 wipe is a bad movie. It's like thermonuclear explosion all over your bathroom. That being said, Big D, what wipe score do you give WarGames?
So I don't think it's a surprise that I like this movie, and I still do today. To me, the most enjoyable aspect and parts of the movie is when David's on the computer. It's nostalgic watching this guy play with what essentially is antiques today. But remembering they were state-of-the-art in 83, it's tense. I think it's effective. They managed to make inanimate machines come alive. It works today as well as it did 35 years ago. I think it blended the arms race unease of the 80s with the beginning of like computers entering into the homes. I think it still managed to grip me today. It was a simpler time where kids were afraid of nuclear holocaust and every kid wanted to be a computer hacker. I loved it. 2 hours flew by. I'm going to give it 1 wipe.
Every kid wanted to be a hacker? Every kid?
Yeah, pretty much.
I
if
did.
you couldn't play sports.
All right, 1 wipe. Gene, how many wipes do you give this movie?
So I was amazed at how they took an 80s movie about technology and make it so exciting in 2018. So the hard part about technology movies is that they're dated very quickly, right? So we watch a 90s movie, we know it's the 90s because they pull out a giant ass cell phone and you're like, that looks ridiculous. Or, if it's an 80s movie like The Last Starfighter because it looks like shit. This was amazing because they took an 80s movie about tech, made it exciting in 2018. They also took, as Big D mentioned, a 2-hour movie and made it feel like 30 minutes. It's amazing how fast this movie flew by. Also, star-studded with future stars that they just packed in there, people who would go on to have, if not amazing careers, at least be noticeable faces that you go, oh, that guy. So to me, WarGames is a fun, eternally relevant movie that suffers from one thing, and that's those few awkward moments where it tried a little too hard to get romance in there or emotion in there. If they would have just made Matthew Broderick and Ali Sheedy just friends, it would have been a lot cooler, right? Two friends who hang out at school, guy and a girl. You don't have to force that romance angle. I think it would have been a lot cooler. All that said, I would say that we're looking at a one-wipe movie for me.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I still think that the movie tried to do that with the romance between Ali Sheedy and Matthew Broderick's characters. Like, they were just friends. He wasn't trying to bang her. He didn't really he was just kind of this aloof hacker kid. He wasn't trying to like hook up with her. Like, as they
tongue in her mouth.
As they hung out more, the friends became a relationship. But it wasn't intended necessarily to be that way. It's not like he set out to do that.
So is this negatively affecting your score?
No, I'm just saying the first part of that relationship, the first part of this movie, when they're developing that relationship, I found charming. I thought that while their on-screen chemistry wasn't very good, it was enjoyable. Like, for all the right reasons you guys said. Here's a character that's not trying to go too much. But then the other side characters and the other subplots, like with, them allowing a tour group from Birmingham to go through the NORAD installation, and, the guy chomping on the cigar, that's the general in charge of NORAD. And, it got the second half of the movie with the Dr. Jurassic Park. It just got a little, it went off the deep end for me. And I thought it could be either you're going to be a charming movie that's going to tell a moral story at the end, or be this wacky, rompy, comedy at the end that then tries to teach a lesson. I don't know what this movie wanted to be. So that, for me, it's below average. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's just, I wouldn't watch it again. Therefore, it's 3 wipes.
Just for the record, for listeners at home who are screaming right now and pulling out their hair,
yeah.
NORAD did allow tours up until 9/11. You could actually go to the Cheyenne Mountain compound and go into the facility and check it out. So, not fake.
Okay, but they're not going to take people to sit at a computer. They're going to be like, Lieutenant Lyons, I need you to go ahead and relieve duty. Please press the button. Oh my God! Like, they're not. It's not like TGI Fridays at NORAD on the tour.
I once took a tour of Beale Air Force Base and they let me go into the hypoxia chamber. I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to do that, but it was pretty cool.
But you can't let a hypothetical situation, we don't know if it happened or didn't happen. You're letting some fictitious thing affect your score. Well, they didn't do tours.
No, even if they did do
he
tours.
was chomping on a cigar.
The depiction of the characters was such that it was ridiculous.
You're the man who told me, I like the way it makes sense. April O'Neil, she's a reporter. So of course she would befriend the turtles. I like the way it makes logical sense.
I never said any of that.
Yes, you did.
I said April O'Neil is a darker depiction in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is closer to is closer to the comic book depiction, which is what the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles wanted to be. Listen, I get it. You're upset. You're upset that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is better than WarGames, and that's just a fact. I apologize. Facts don't care about your feelings.
Roger, you remember when you wanted me to tell you about times where you're invading people's space and you're not picking up on social cues? This is that time, Roger. This is that time.
You're my Jim. All right, so if we add up all the scores, 3 wipes and 2 1-wipe scores, Gene, what does that add up to if you divide it by 3?
Roger, with a 1 wipe from Dick, a 1 wipe from me, and 3 wipes from you, that gives WarGames an average wipe score of 1.67.
And Big D, where does that put WarGames in ranking on the Pantheon of Shat?
So this is why we do it, a 3-man vote, because it balances out the craziness and we come to a sensible solution, just like the Whopper. It's best not to play sometimes. So in the end, Rogers 3, it doesn't make a world of difference. This is a 1.67. It is tied in the 35 spot with Gremlins, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It is better than Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Star Troopers.
No way.
It is worse. It is worse than Spaceballs and Friday the 13th.
It is definitely worse than Spaceballs. I mean, the system works.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I just said.
Yeah, you're right. Well, now's the time of the podcast where we give you our shout outs and tell you what movie category we're doing next. Big D, do we have any shout outs?
We do. We have actually quite a bit of them, and we've come up with a possible video holiday special that we're going to try to do this week where we can try to knock them all out. So hopefully that happens. So we're saving them. Otherwise, next week we're going to go back to them. But we do have a voicemail, and the voicemail is from Carmelita in California. Now, I don't know if this is the Carmelita Valdez who's been supporting us and listening to us for quite a long time. Do we think this is the same Carmelita, or are there two Carmelitas listening to the podcast?
I don't know. There was a real boy Joshua, and then there was an artificial software named Joshua that controlled Whopper. So there might be more than one Carmelita, but one might also be a software artificial intelligence bot on Twitter.
Well, if this is the Carmelita that's been supporting the podcast for quite a long time, we appreciate you, and let's hear what she has to say.
Hey guys, it's Carmelita in California. Feel compelled to call you and thank you from the bottom of my heart for your honest review and Shat rating of Tron. All these years of people gushing to me about how much they love the film, I was starting to question my sanity because I've never been able to get through more than 15, 20 minutes of the film before I fall asleep or have to turn it off because I just can't take it. As visually beautiful as it is, the storyline is garbage. So I want to thank you for speaking truth. It took a lot of courage. I know that it broke your heart, and I appreciate you. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Carmelita has obviously never been to an underground goth rave where Tron was playing on the walls in the background. Or maybe she was, because she did say it's visually stunning.
I think a common theme with movies that we find boring is just that droning synth. I can't think of a single movie that didn't make me sleepy, that didn't have that like maybe without the voice crack, but you get what I'm saying. It's that droning, because Blade Runner had that too. A lot of that droning synth and like dark screen. Maybe we're just, you know what it is, and I firmly believe this, is that every member of this podcast is chronically exhausted. And so we're just all on the verge of falling asleep at all times.
No, Tron is like one of those things that everyone, because it's so old, everyone thinks, oh, I remember Tron. It was great. It's epic. I remember the video game. But nobody ever says, I'm going to sit down and watch Tron. And why do you think that is? Because in the back of your mind, the little Joshua inside your head is telling you this will not be a good experience. It's nowhere near as good as we all remember it. And I think deep down inside, we realize that.
Yeah. Well, there is a new feature on our website that actually tells you what movie we're doing. That came from the head of Gene Lyons.
Yeah, I thought it was a little unfair to people to tell them the week of what movie we're going to watch next. It doesn't give you much time to actually watch it. So this was a calendar that Big D built. It's a big, beautiful calendar he built. And essentially what it does is lets you know well in advance what we're going to be watching or what's up for a vote. So you can prepare yourself by watching the movie and then listen along having seen it. I know a lot of the audience is fairly young and hasn't, a lot of these movies came out before you were born or you were just a little kid. And a lot of the movies that we're doing weren't exactly super popular at the time. So this is a great way to just kind of get yourself prepped up and join us for the viewing. Also, it allows you to vote not necessarily 23 movies deep into a list, but rather you can click directly on the date and vote on something that is a tight race. So Big D, we thank you for building that calendar.
Oh, I'm glad. It's actually helped us out. If you go to the website, it's right in the top tab, in the top navigation. It says movie release calendar, or you can go to shatthemovies.com/events. Right now, we are 7 weeks out. So for the first time ever, I could tell you December 25th is Jingle All the Way. Oh, shit. I'm not going to run through it. You can go and check 3rd. It out if you want.
No,
but this will be in January.
Yeah, it's like Back to the Future. It's a movie that happens.
Yeah, Future Man. So so our audience is like, fuck, I knew Jingle All the Way. I listened to it last week.
That's right.
But it goes all the way through, and there's a couple voting categories, like you mentioned. Best of Rick Dukerman and Best of the Two Coreys is up there. So go and vote. And also, we've mentioned how if you want to help us and you can't make any kind of a monetary donation, the two ways you can help us the most is to recommend us to a friend. And then the other way to do it is to go to shatthemovies.com/survey and fill out the quick. It's like 10 questions because our host, Libsyn, wants to match us with the best advertiser and the product that meets the audience's needs the best. So go there, 2 seconds, fill it out, and it really helps us.
Yeah. Who are we kidding? It's going to be Purple Mattress. So that website where you can respond to the survey is shatthemovies.com/survey. You can also leave us a voicemail at 914-719-SHAT. And we are doing a sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review television series. And we have a big announcement. Gene, what are we doing with Shat on TV?
Raj, I'm happy to announce that now for 2019, we're covering season 3 of HBO's True Detective. True Detective is the return of a show that's beloved by me, by Big D, Roger, Carrie, and especially King B. All of us are big fans of the show, and we're super excited to be doing it.
Now, fans who may have heard us on our Westworld or our Taboo or American Gods podcast, we typically do like a media instacast, and then we do a deep dive a day later, and then we do a fan email and response. Typically, that's been our format. Is that going to be the same for True Detective, or are there going to be any new faces or new voices on the show?
Yeah, we're going to do it slightly differently. So we know season 2 wasn't exactly perfect with the True Detective, but this is HBO, and King B went and saw a sneak preview and assures us that season 3 is going to be at least half as good as season 1. And that's still 10 times better than anything else on TV right now. So to do True Detective, there will be a new podcast. So wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, YouTube, just go there and subscribe to True Detective from Shat on TV. And you'll begin receiving episodes starting with the episode 1 and 2 recap that should be out this week. And that'll get you up to speed and recall the highlights and lows of the previous 2 seasons. And then we're going to do 1 episode a week every Tuesday, which will include the deep dive and the fan mail portion called The Watch. That'll all be combined into 1 episode a week. So you can still write us at host@shatontv.com. Let us know what you think about True Detective, about the podcast. And then a week before the show airs, we'll put out a season 3 preview. And then season 1 of episode 3 launches on January 13th.
And the reason why we're doing it this way is in the past, when we're doing a television show, I'm assuming that people kind of listen to both at some point. They've listened to our TV and this. Usually when we do a series, a television series, it eats up everything. It consumes every waking hour that we have. And we've always had to put the movie podcast on hiatus. And that's hurt the people who are only the movie fans who listen to us. And every week they want to hear a movie. Doing this schedule and breaking it out, we're going to have another announcement a little bit down the road where we're going to do something similar. It will allow us to continue Shat the Movies and the TV podcast simultaneously. Yeah. So if you're a fan of the movies, we're not going to make you wait 2 months like we did, unfortunately, during Westworld.
And the good thing is we've expanded our roster of voices over here at Shat on TV. In fact, the roster for True Detective is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, so primarily the cast for True Detective will be the King B, Big D, and me. But we will still have, other guests on from time to time. Raj, I know that you're eager to fill in. You're a big fan of the show as well. So I think we'll be doing kind of a mix and match as life dictates. And that'll allow us to keep rolling with TV, hopefully, all the time, in 2019, basically, with True Detective. Again, hot on the heels of that, American Gods is coming back. And of course, Game of Thrones will be back in April of 2019. So it's going to be no rest. It's going to be a blitz January, February, March, and April, and into May even. So 2019 is going to be busy, guys. I'm excited about it.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just follow Shat the Movies. Our Facebook is Shat the Movies Podcast. Our website, shatthemovies.com, where you can vote on upcoming movies and see what episodes we're doing in the next few weeks. If you want to email us a commission or a movie category recommendation. Our email address is host@shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. If you stop by, please be sure to leave a 5-star review. It really helps the podcast grow. Again, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, at shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert, and Gene Joshua Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next week for our review of this movie.
Devil's Night is upon us again. Throw a little party, start a bunch of fires, make a little profit.
When someone's dead, they can't come back, can they?
That's what I thought. Are you referring to anyone in particular?
You know, my daddy used to say, every man's got a devil. You can't rest till you find him.
Winked at me before he jumped out a 4th floor window like he had wings.
Is his link between the land of the living and the realm of the dead.
So you killed the crow.
Call, bang, I'm dead.
I bashed the devil stood and felt how awful goodness is. How awful goodness.
Fuck me. Now you got my head. Prove unwilling to turn the key required to launch a missile. Prove unwilling to turn the key. Fuck. A missile strike.
Missile strike.
Hey, it's me, Mario. I can't turn the key.
I was actually going to compliment you because you got through that first line pretty well. I was like, fuck, Roger's on to it today.
I thought I was on. Man. Jeez.
Oh, and then you fucking crashed and burned.
Oh, I was like that pterodactyl. Me, so strike.
Hold on, I gotta sneeze again. Okay.